Hey everyone, welcome to the JRock Report IG Live Lunch and Learn that we're having today with guest speaker, therapist, author, and toxic relationship coach, Matthew Phipher. I am going to see if I can add him now. I usually have tech support doing this for me, but I am leaning in, expanding my horizons. I'm getting out of my own comfort zone. I ask you guys to get out of your comfort zone. Me, I'm her. So I think I should be able to invite Matthew in just a moment. Hello, I'm gonna try and wave to some of you as you're coming in. I'm glad that you're here. I think it's dope that you decided to spend your lunch break learning today. I think that's admirable. And if you have not already, please go ahead and go to our website if you want updates. Like if you want to be in the know and know where we're going to be in the world for our live events, or you want to know what I'm doing on NPR radio or on CBS, or want practical tips and tools and life hacks to help you with intergenerational healing, to help you with epigenetic change and nervous system regulation, to help you with nutritional psychology, and to help you, rock your recovery, rock your wellness, and rock your life, I think that so much of trauma recovery is not just identifying the trauma, but actually moving forward from it and learning how to heal and deal so you can thrive. So I'm going to try and wave to as many of you as I can as you're coming in. And I'm okay with if it's a small group of 220 or two. Like, I'm just glad that you're here today. I know some of you are working and you already let me know that you'll join or watch it later or subscribe to the podcast. And if you have iTunes, Spotify, or iheart radio, you can subscribe to the podcast. So let's see if I can get Matthew on here successfully. I'm going to see if I can get this to work the way that I want it to. Shortly. And it looks like he is more tech savvy than I am. I think he has joined. So good.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning in the world where we are. Afternoon almost.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I was just kind of letting people know that I was figuring this out. I always talk to people, because I do life coaching too. And I always talk to people about getting outside of your comfort zone. And Matthew, I'm much more comfortable in a studio that's all contained and it's not all live and
Yep.
someone else is doing all the things. But if it's not uncomfortable, it can make you grow. So I'm glad to be here. Feel free to share with your followers if you haven't already. And what we're going to do, as you already know, we're going to upload this to our JRock Report podcast. And then those folks that follow us from NPR radio or from CBS or from wherever else in the world, they might have met us at a live event, or maybe just a random person that's intrigued by the topic, they can go back and listen later. Also, you guys, make sure you subscribe to the JRock Report podcast, because Matthew and I are going to have like a little bonus segment just towards the end that you can only hear from the podcast. And I'm going to try and wave to as many of you as I can as you're coming in, but if not, just know I'm actually waving to you for real. Okay. So let me just make sure I have everything set up for the podcast portion of it. And I think I do. And so I think we can jump in. So we've been doing this podcast, I think, since like 2018. Like, I feel like we're OGs. I mean, anything before the pandemic feels like an OG to me now.
Absolutely.
And we talk about everything from environmental and climate change to how to evoke joy and rewire your brain using neuroscience to lessen the impact of stress chemicals and hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, things like that, to surviving sexual assault, to working within systemic oppression, to narcissism, to healthy relationship green flags. So we have a lineup for this fall, for this autumn, and I'm excited about it. And you were one of the first people that was able to confirm. So I think it's just kind of cool that you're one of the first for our fall series. Okay, so I wanted to kick this off by saying that there's a book called Living in the Age of Entitlement. Living in the Age of Entitlement. And it's talking about the narcissism epidemic. Now, as a person that works in journalism and public health, I definitely think we see a surge of entitlement. Everybody gets a trophy. I need to, even through social media, I need to know everything. I need to hear everything. I need to see everything. I need to be aware of everything.
Yeah.
But I also think, Matthew, it seems like everyone is throwing, everyone is an overstatement. You know how therapists are. Don't
Yeah.
use sweeping generalizations, but you know what I mean. A lot of people are throwing around this term narcissism, and they're
Yeah.
actually walking around diagnosing people too. I'm a little concerned about that. Can you
Yeah.
give me your thoughts on the age of entitlement and just what's the surge about right now, and why are people throwing it around so freely? What's happening?
So I want to say that, there's, even though narcissists do feel entitled, there's a difference between being entitled and someone who might have narcissistic personality disorder. So, someone can feel very entitled, someone can be very vain, someone can be very into themselves and not be a narcissist whatsoever. So, so I want to make that very, very clear. And oftentimes that may not be the case. And the reality of it is that there is a spectrum, and we're all somewhere on that spectrum. There actually is a certain level of healthy level of narcissism, which most people have. So when we talk about a healthy level of narcissism, anytime something negative happens to us, so we lose a job, we lose a loved one, we're sick. We do need to make everything all about ourselves for a period of time until we get back on our feet. And so that's somewhere on that spectrum. But then when we start getting into the diagnosis, what you're talking about, narcissistic personality disorder, that person feels like they need to make everything all about themselves all the time, and to the point where it's a little bit more than just making everything about themselves, and it's a little bit more than just this sense of entitlement. And some narcissists may not even come across as entitled. They actually can come across as more covert. They can come across as more communal, more giving. So a lot of times when people think about narcissism, the grandiose narcissist is what comes across as what people call the classic narcissist, the one that has to be the center of attention. That's not all narcissists. That's definitely a portion of them. But when we start talking about narcissistic personality disorder, we have to understand that it's more than just wanting to be the center of attention. It is exploitation, it's abuse, it's this need to put others down to make themselves feel better, in particular people who are closest to them. And so people who are on the outside looking in oftentimes may not see it. On the outside looking in, it may look like the perfect couple on social media. It may look like what people call relationship goals. It might be the pastor of your church, because especially with covert narcissists are oftentimes are cult leaders. So one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of people have about narcissism is that this person is very, very confident. On the surface, they look confident, but really, it's actually deep-rooted levels of insecurity and this whole epidemic that we're talking about. The reason why a lot of people might think and might feel like they have been or talk about or want to diagnose is that there's a lot of things that mimic and look like narcissism, like unhealed trauma. Obviously the divorce rates have gone up, but people also are dating at higher rates because of the social media apps. So we now have a lot of relationship trauma that a lot of people aren't really dealing with, aren't really healing from, aren't really doing anything about. And so they're bringing in a lot of baggage and a lot of unhealed trauma that once again can mimic and look like narcissism. A lot of people one of the things that's not talked about enough is the fact that people who have experienced narcissistic abuse, if they don't go do the work, can a lot of times that can look and mimic narcissism as well. It can be healed and it can be dealt with, but some people call it narcissistic fleas, where you are carrying in those type of traits.
What's that term again? Did you say narcissistic
fleas? Like fleas, like fleas on a dog.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm a geek, and you just said a term I've never heard before. Tell us about narcissistic fleas. I thought you meant like fight, flight, or freeze.
No, narcissistic fleas. So for example, victims of narcissistic abuse, oftentimes after going back to that sense of entitlement, after they leave a toxic relationship, if they don't actually go do the work, if they don't do the healing, if they don't start working with a coach or a therapist, they don't start recognizing some of their own behavior, They may go into another relationship feeling like the world owes them something because of everything that they've gone through in a relationship. It's very common for people. One of the things we have to that most people, I mean, I should say most people know, that is well documented is that people who are abusive come from backgrounds of abuse, and people don't think about that when it comes to narcissistic abuse or domestic violence or anything like that. That now you going into a new relationship can now become the problem. So, someone who may have been cheated on might be controlling in their next relationship, right? Might stalk in their next relationship, trying to prove and trying to, because it's coming from a world of pain, that they're trying to avoid being hurt again, and oftentimes people, regardless of whether they're talking about narcissism or someone who's been hurt in the past, they're doing things like, and they'll justify their bad behavior with concern, right? Well, I'm just concerned, and I just, I've been cheated on in the past, so I just want to make sure that everything is right. And before you know it, that same person is justifying their bad behavior for stalking or whatever it is, or anything, right? Going through their phones, calling people in your phone, whatever the case is, because of their previous experience.
Is that conscious manipulation though? If on that part, like if it's a narcissistic flea kind of scenario, is it more often conscious that they know they're manipulating because they feel out of control, they feel that they've been traumatized, or is a lot of it at a subconscious level?
A lot of it's unconscious. A lot of it's unconscious. And a lot of times they may not have malicious intent. They may not have a desire for control, but that's exactly what's happening, right? They want control because they don't want to get hurt again, but that's exactly what's happening. They don't even recognize that they're actually hurting other people in the process.
So how can they recognize it? Sometimes I have patients that are like, I think I'm a narcissist, and oftentimes I think in our field we say, well, if you're saying that, you probably aren't. But what's your,
you probably aren't,
your specialization? I tell
people when people ask me that, I tell them, like, you're probably not because you're asking it, but at the same time, you're probably also simultaneously recognizing that there's some things that you need to change. You probably recognize that there's some bad behaviors that you're doing, that you're saying to yourself, like, this is narcissistic. So you're recognizing that this is bad behavior. You're recognizing maybe someone has said something. And one of the things I tell people is that the way to heal from toxic relationships is actually other relationships. And that doesn't necessarily have to be romantic, but one of the first things that people do is that they want to isolate themselves, and we want to actually get back involved in community. The reason why I say that,
talk about that a lot on your page, like how the isolation can actually become a deterrent for your whole journey after one or two bad experiences.
Yep. So what happens is that we tend to isolate, but what happens if we start to connect, people can start to tell you what they're seeing, and they can kind of start calling out, and you can kind of recognize what your behavior, what's happening with your behavior based on what's happening, whether it be a romantic partner or with friends and family members who might be able to talk to you about some of the things that they're seeing. You'll start to see certain common themes in relationships, things like that. You might start to notice that you kind of avoid conflict. You might be more of an avoidant. You might be someone who kind of hovers. And this kind of also kind of goes into, you as a parent. You have to start to, and so I would also say that you have to be open to some dialogue that people might have with you about some of your problematic behavior. The other thing that I tell people is that we have to realize that a lot of times what happens is that once we've experienced a bad relationship, we think that we have to heal first and then we get to go live life, when it's actually the other way around. We choose to live life, and then we start to heal through that process. So you actually might start healing during the process of dating. You might actually heal when you actually go live life, and because what happens is that you start to notice that there's some certain roadblocks and certain themes that continuously come up as you're living your life and as you're going through that, and then that becomes a part of your recovery process, right? You're dating, and you notice that you're not attracting, no one's, you're not getting any takers, right? So we can kind of like look and unpack, like, well, what is it about me that's kind of turning some people off, right? Am I being too controlling? Am I ghosting people? Am I not calling people back? Those sorts of things. And so you can start to unpack, and then that becomes a part of your healing process.
This is so like wonderfully power packed and loaded, and I like this because it's not only identifying the issue, but it's also identifying like the potential solution. I like to work from a solution focused perspective. You said something though that jogged my memory, or that sort of sparked a thought rather. Um, Gosh, what's the way that there were two things. It'll come back to me. It was so good. I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about is if someone is noticing these kind of behaviors. One of the things that you said, I think, in your work is that you talk about how, I think, forgive me if I'm misquoting it because I'm just kind of doing it from things that I've observed from your work. It's not so much what we attract; it's how we attach.
Yes.
Right? Because there's this whole like sort of law of attraction, like very spiritual idea, even in Judeo-Christianity, that it's like, well, you brought this on yourself. You're bringing these people into your life. It must be you. But what's that whole attract versus attach idea from your perspective?
So a lot of times, so I work with a lot of people who are trying to get back out on the dating scene after experiencing a toxic relationship, and one of the things that comes up pretty frequently is they'll go on a date, they'll even go on like maybe date 3, and they'll actually beat themselves up over the fact that they met someone else who was toxic or narcissistic or whatever the case is, and they're like, well, I met someone else who's toxic, this and that, and I'm like, okay, so like, don't go out with them again. Like it's not that big of a deal, right? It's actually, so a lot of times people will do this before dating as well, that they will avoid dating because they're afraid of running into another narcissist, and you can't hold back life. We have to understand that we're gonna live. We still, like, they've been here since the beginning of time. They will be here till the end of time. And so you don't want to hold your life back. It's more about recognizing it and understanding that, like, the problem isn't necessarily going on a date with them. The problem isn't like meeting someone or anything like that. The problem it becomes a problem once you start moving in with them, when you start having children with them, when you get married with them, when you start to attach. And oftentimes you'll notice certain themes with toxic relationships, that they move very, very quickly. Right.
Intensity versus intimacy.
Exactly. Yep. It's something I say all the time. Yeah. Right. So you'll notice that this person starts to pressure you, to move in very quickly, having kids really quickly, doing things that might seem okay in the beginning because they're so charming in the beginning, and really thick in the beginning, and also the love bomb is so in the beginning is so amazing that you just don't want to ruin it. And so you think to yourself that that this is the next step in this, but not realizing that it takes a long time to really actually get to know someone. And so if it's been under a year, you want to really, really slow that process down.
Stick around and wait. I often say when I do dating and relationship coaching, even friendship, do friendship, dating, and marriage based on the pattern, not the potential. So we kind of have to stick. And I really think pop culture has a lot to do with this, honestly, Matthew.
100%.
You know what I mean? Because if you watch even just a lot of these cartoon movies and these fairy tale things, they have such problematic themes in them. I mean, they actually have love stories in some of these cartoons. I'm not going to say which cartoon franchise it is, but where this princess is falling in love with this person who's her captor. I mean, and this is what we're romanticizing, and just the whole whisk you off your feet, the codependence. So I guess it's a lot of rewiring there. And I think we get a lot of sort of collective narcissism, or a lot of collective pressure, collective gaslighting. Hey, you better wife her, or you better go out with him, or, scarcity mentality, you better, or if not. But it's if it's meant to be, it won't miss me. But also there should be some sustainability there. There shouldn't be this big race to further commitment, because then I think we get into power and control. So then if we have children, now I have power and control. If we share real estate or whatever, even down to friend groups, if you share social circles. So what do you do? Because you you had that funny video where you were sitting there realizing that the narcissist has started a smear campaign with that cool summertime music. What do you do when you realize someone started a smear campaign and they're actually impacting your closest loved ones, friends, or family, to the point that they seem so lovely that maybe people won't believe you yet? Maybe they can't. What do people do in that situation?
It's very difficult. Sometimes you have to make some really difficult decisions. Sometimes it's so bad that you have to actually cut that family or friend off for a period of time. because sometimes, especially if that person is giving that person information about you, your whereabouts, those sorts of things. I've seen and I've worked with people who it's actually gotten to a dangerous point. So if it's at that level, you might have to cut them off. Maybe for a period of time. It might be, might be for a good period of time, for forever. And then other times, you might just decide. This is where boundaries come in, right? Good mental and emotional, mental and emotional boundaries come in. It's okay for them to have their own thoughts and their own perspective of who this person is, right? And it's okay for you to disagree with them. But one of the things, especially early on, if it's early on where where there's a smear campaign, I would set some boundaries with this person. I'll listen. I'm happy that you think this about them. I have my own opinion about them, and I'm not really open for discussion about it. If you want to hang out, want to have coffee, and if you want to talk about other things, like, so be it. But I'm not really open for discussion about it. But if they keep bringing it up and things like that, know that there's likely they could be kind of like a plant for them, regardless if they know it or not, because sometimes people do this unknowingly. Sometimes people just genuinely think they're just, oh yeah, talk to so-and-so, they're doing good, they're dating again, blah, 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 and giving them all sorts of information, not realizing.
Wow.
Because sometimes little tidbits of information, like, is just enough to get the narcissist to, continue to stalk, to continue to pry for more information. And sometimes people just genuinely, especially if they haven't experienced it, they just genuinely don't know. And again, narcissists oftentimes will make it seem like they're doing it out of concern. So, for example, I've worked with, I can't tell you how many times I've worked with someone in a situation where a narcissist will go to a person's, all their neighbors. Hey, just, I'm going to be out of town for a while, right? Knowing that they're actually divorced. I'm going to be out of town for a while. Can you just, keep an eye on the house and things like that? If you see anything, see anything suspicious, just text me. And of course, eventually, right? Of course, out of like someone trying to be genuinely kind. Well, hey, I'm seeing some strange cars in your driveway. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing that. So sometimes people don't even realize that they are like a part of the smear campaign and a part of the abuse.
They don't realize they're a plant or a flying monkey, as we call them. Yeah. I like what you said, though, where you take your personal power back and you don't go into this sort of, you're not meeting them at the level where the problem is created. No. It's stepping out of it. And obviously, a person with a lot of narcissism, it's almost like their full-time job is to get people not to see who they are. Yep. So they're going to be working on this morning, noon, night, this obsession of ego protection. Yep. Your one statement of truth can't stand to that. So it's like better, I think, to disengage. And then I guess to some extent too, maybe that will tell you something about the kind of friends or family member that you want to have in your healthy circle. But the thing about boundaries, it's not enough to see it. It's not enough to say it. There has to be a corresponding action or consequence because of it. Yeah. And I think that's something you have to actually execute them. You have to actually execute them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So for those of you that are munching on your lunches, while you're here in this Lunch and Learn today, if you have a question, you can go ahead and drop it in the comments now while we're here as we're getting ready to wrap up. But something I want to ask you is, like, for our social media listeners or followers or folks that find us through my NPR work or CBS work, narcissism, again, I would say, this is me, stop diagnosing people, stop running around throwing the term. We all have some degree of narcissism there, and we learned from you today that it could even be healthy on some level, right? And also, like, it doesn't mean, like, I say this to people sometimes, they're like, this person's so bipolar. In our practice, I say, it's still a person. Like, this is the behavior or the disorder, but they're still them. So we can almost turns into this us versus them mentality, the narcissist, the bipolar, the sociopath. So what would you say? There's so much chatter about this. What's, like, sort of the one or two things you want society to know about this right now? There's so much that could be said, but how would you kind of wrap that in a bow in a way?
I would say that it doesn't matter if they're a narcissist or not. It really doesn't. A lot of times people are looking for, looking for a title, looking for a diagnosis and things like that. I tell people,
Okay.
look at how people are treating you. If this person is treating you poorly and, are habitually cheating and are abusive, manipulative, exploiting you, things like that, it doesn't matter that they're a narcissist, right? What if they don't get diagnosed with narcissism? Like, what if there's nothing wrong with them and that's just how they are, right? Does it really actually matter that are you going to stay with them, despite all these things because they're not a narcissist? That wouldn't make any sense either. So let's not get so caught up in the title. Let's pay more attention to how we're being treated. Let's pay more attention to, whether or not people are respecting our boundaries. And then the other thing is, a lot of times in relationships, we put love above everything. We think that love conquers all. And
There's
one of the
a
things that
lot
teach
of
people,
magnets and stickers that say that.
and I tell people that, especially people who are dating, is that respect comes first, right? Is this someone who I respect? Can they respect me? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to really actually be in a relationship long term with this person, there's going to be days where you don't really love this person, but there still needs to be a level of respect where, that this person isn't going to go out and cheat and vice versa, right? That there's not going to be, that when there's disagreements, that they don't feel like they have to become abusive or become problematic. It's just a disagreement. Right, but we still
there's
have
like
a
a
level of
standard
respect.
level of care and respect.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's enough respect in the relationship that we're not going to step outside of these lines, which of course are boundaries.
That's great. And then for people, and thank you, Peppermill. Someone says ignoring the narcissist is the most powerful weapon, and it strengthens our boundaries. I think that's kind of in the family of like gray rocking or yellow rocking. How important is it if there's someone that's listening that they're like, what, I think I'm engaging in a relationship with someone that I think has a lot of narcissism, but no one that knows them will probably believe that because it's too covert. Is it important for that person to explain that to those that are closest to them? Or is it more important to remove yourself and just say, yeah, it just wasn't a good fit kind of thing?
It is important to get validated, so even though the people that you're talking to who might be in your circle may not see it, may not know it, I would find other people who may have experienced it and may know it, right? So if you're not getting the validation that you need or want, then I would find it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the news circles. Just sometimes honestly, people just don't get it, because when you listen to the stories of like people who have actually been through it, when you actually listen to the stories of like real actual gaslighting, they on the surface, if you didn't know what narcissism and what gaslighting looked like, they sound unbelievable. For example, there was someone who I was working with that her now ex-husband would hide one shoe to make sure that she was late for work. Not every day or anything like that, just one shoe.
I have seen these stories too, just enough to throw them off kilter. Like that's why we call it crazy making behavior.
Yeah.
Okay,
just
I'm
one
listening.
shoe.
I'm following.
Yeah, just one shoe. And so she, and so people. So now keep in mind, gaslighting happens from people that you're supposed to be able to trust.
Yeah.
And so she would tell people like, I think my husband's like doing this intentionally, and this and that, blah blah. And no, why would he do that? Why would he make you late for work? That doesn't even make any sense? And you're right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you don't understand that there really actually are people out there like this who do these type of things, then someone might not get the validation that they actually moving things is very, very common in this world. Hiding your keys, things like that. And so, but yeah, when you go to certain people who don't understand it, who've never heard of these terms, things like that, they might tell you like, yeah, and sometimes that might make you feel even more crazy and might make the problem even worse. And so,
I could see that.
so I would talk to some people who know. I have a free support group, Wounded Healers.
Good. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, I have a free Facebook support group called Wounded Healers. I also have I have a lot of free content on YouTube and on pretty much on all platforms these days. But yeah, people like you can just go hop in there and talk to people, have conversations with people who have been there, done that. We're always just having different conversations where people can communicate their different problems. People talk about like will help you out in terms of like how to plan for your divorce and exit and things like that. Whether or not you're actually going crazy, whether or not you're the problem in the situation.
Wow.
So there's a lot of great conversations there.
Yeah, I think that sounds so helpful. And I like what you said, because I think that finding community that's experienced it is more important than trying to get your community to understand it.
Right.
Because I think that kind of lends itself to that constant love hunger, that constant validation hunger that you may or may not fully be able to get.
Right.
And I think the way that like our Judeo-Christian colonized society was set up, a lot of it was set up with tenets and principles of narcissism or gaslighting or abuse. And, you know, if we're being taught this through our spiritual context, through our education context, it's a big tall order to get
Yeah.
people to start to recognize it, especially if it's not the Hollywood thing where you see someone just overtly being, you know, over the top. Okay, so I know this wasn't in the questions. Last thing though, but maybe top 3 things that people should look for that are healthy flags. Like what are healthy signs of relationships? Maybe top 3 just that come to mind.
So the top 3, number 1, I would say be a good person, right? So it's way easier for you to recognize a good, healthy partner when you learn how to become one. It's far easier. So one of the things I always give this example, like when we go to a car dealership, we don't ask certain things like, does this car drive? Does this are the tires flat? Like we would never ask that. But on the dating scene, like a lot of times we are kind of like looking for that bare minimum. Like we actually shouldn't be looking for narcissism. A narcissist will never fit a good health, will never fit the description of a good healthy partner. And when you start to learn about good healthy dating, good healthy partnership, and things like that, you'll recognize the other behavior very quickly, right? You'll recognize love bombing. You'll recognize,
Yeah.
manipulative behavior. You'll recognize criticism and things that you just know that aren't healthy. The other thing that I would say in terms of green flags and things like that is, someone who can kind of articulate like work that they've done, someone who is, so one of the things
On
so this is kind
themselves,
of
like self-work, self-development.
yeah.
Okay.
Someone who has like a level of accountability. They can describe to you and tell you like how they're accountable to different people. Someone who is not someone, like when you listen to different stories of their past where they've had like conflict and things like that, sometimes they might be the hero, sometimes they might they might be the victim, but they're not always the victim, they're not always the hero. But definitely listen to how they handle conflict. A lot of times you'll hear how they talk about different things, and you'll notice that there's like they feel entitled to like get people back and things like that. And it might sound funny on the dating scene, but eventually becomes you. So you want to listen to
That
how that person.
vindictive kind of, yeah, that they felt out of power. They have to get that
Right.
power back. Yeah, things that can maybe go over our head. I always say we learn so much in school, but when we get out, we know nothing. So
Yep,
it's these
absolutely.
conversations that are so important, I think, for our academy and for what we're doing in the world. And I'm so happy that you're able to be a part of it for our fall series. How can people find out more about you? And, are you taking new clients or patients? Where in the world are you, and how can people connect?
Find me on all social media platforms. At Phipher Coaching. The platforms I'm active on all platforms, I should say, my largest platform is TikTok. I always have different courses, different things happening. So I would just kind of go into the link in my bio. You can book either a consultation, or I always have free content and free courses that people can grab and download and things like that. So we always have something going on.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's a journey, and I often say like rock your recovery, rock your wellness, like rock your day, like really take control in a way, but of
Yeah,
yourself
absolutely.
and of your responses and your actions. So I'm really glad that you were able to be here today. I know a lot of people were really excited about this topic, and I like that you were able to give it some texture and some depth. It goes beyond sort of the zingers that we hear. We're going to jump off here in a moment, and Matthew, I'll ring you just so we can do our little 10-minute wrap up, and
Okay.
we'll go from there. But the JRock Academy community really appreciates you. I'm glad that you've been with us today, and thanks for being a part of our Lunch and Learn.
No problem. Thank you for
You're
having me.
welcome.
Yep.
All right. So for those of you that have filed in and are still here, go to the JRock Report on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, and subscribe. Thank you, Pepper Miller 40, for being here and for the round of applause. And thank you for the questions or comments that did come in. I'm glad that I think 50 plus or so of you were here today. Let's see. Is there anything else before I go? Anything else anyone else wants to name? I feel like I'm closing a therapy session out. Is there anything else that you want to name or voice? What's your primary takeaway? Well, listen, I'm glad that you joined us. We don't do podcasts that go an hour because I feel like we already live in an age of information overload. So make sure you stay in touch if you choose to, or like or comment or share this with someone. We're on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook as Jrocktherapy. And then, of course, you can subscribe for our website at www.jrocktherapyinstitute.com. And we look forward to just being of service. You know, the world can be such a scary place right now. There's so much fear and just so much unrest. And I think that this is a place where you can come and get news, information, pop culture, and entertainment from a mental health care perspective, but with a solution-focused lens from yours truly, Bella J. Rockman. Thanks for bearing with my introverted journalist self. Today, the technology stuff was not too much of an issue at all, and I'm really grateful for that. And you guys, you know, happy Monday. Go out and rock your wellness, rock your recovery, rock your day. I'm Bella J. Rockman with JRock Therapy, and I'll see you next time for our Lunch and Learn. Keep your eyes out because we got more coming up for the fall semester.